Cranked up, everybody. Thank you for being here so early, and thank you for coming out this morning. And welcome to the Fort Bend Chambers November Infrastructure Planning Division event. Thank you for taking the time to participate. My name is David Gornett, and I am the Infrastructure Planning Chair for the Fort Bend Chamber. The Fort Bend Chamber is the only five-star accredited chamber in the greater Houston region, and we are an advocate for business excellence and beyond for our county and our community and our business partners. I'd like to take the time now to introduce and recognize our sponsors. Today we have Freeze and Nichols, represented by Jeff Taylor, Daniel Menendez with Hewitt Zollers, Sunny Smoke with Neil Schaefer, and Charles Swihart with Preactive IT Solutions. Thank you all for coming out here today. And we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves, say a few words about their companies. We'll start with Jeff. Jeff, would you please come to the podium? He was like, oh, I'm going to get kicked back and relax here.
Yeah. A paid political announcement. I wasn't ready for that. Hey, everybody. I'm a regional VP for Freeze and Nichols for Southeast Texas. And that basically means everything from Louisiana down to Victoria. And right now, Freeze, we've been growing quite a bit. We grew up as a water company, dams and levees and that kind of thing. But today we got 1,000 folks. We're in multiple states now, like 7 states, and the company's really been growing quite a bit. Down here, we've got offices in Houston, Pearland, and have about 150 folks total in that. And we are all things water, transportation, and facilities. What I enjoy most about the company is that we're at a place where we're growing like a lot of you guys in the civil engineering business. We're growing like crazy and bringing on a lot of young kids, a lot of talent. And our company is a good incubator to bring young talent up. We're really good at that. And so I'm really proud to be part of something with a long history. We think we're the oldest engineering firm in Texas, headquartered up in Fort Worth, and have been for almost 130 years. So good seeing you.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jeff and I have both been around for a while. He's got me beat, but we've worked together for 40 years now. So next, Daniel Menendez. Would you like to say a few words about Hewitt Zollers? Since Hewitt Zollers is old as Freeze and Nichols.
We're not quite as old as I'll say Freeze and Nichols, but Hewitt Zollers is a full service architectural engineering firm. We do have a number of offices throughout the United States, but here in Houston, we really focus on a lot of public works type things. A lot of our clients are municipal, county, state level. We are excited about the fact that we do that full service architectural, civil, mechanical, electrical. We can even do the plumbing, landscape architecture, and construction management and surveying. We are very passionate about stepping in the shoes of being an extension of staff for the public agencies. A number of our staff have been on the public side, including myself. We do operate locally very much like a family-owned kind of firm. We really believe in having a good culture of entrepreneurship, of teamwork, of everybody working together. And so it's a fun place to be. It's a fun place to work. And we really enjoy the type of service that we provide, because ultimately infrastructure is all about making it where people can live and be in the same space together. Otherwise, we'd all have to be scattered in thousands of acres of land, right? We couldn't live in close proximity to each other. Infrastructure is really the engine that provides for us to be together. So we're excited about what we do, and be happy to answer any questions about Hewitt Zollers later. Thank you.
And Sonny, would you like to come up and say a few words about Neil Schaefer?
No,
No, you don't.
all right. I'm Sonny, I'm Senior Vice President, and I oversee our South Texas operations. If y'all don't know me already, we do everything they do. No, we're a general service, civil engineering firm. Y'all know the umbrella we all kind of sit under, most of us. And we basically do all of it here locally. We do a lot of transportation. We do public works as well. A lot of H&H, water, wastewater, not the same thing. But what I will say about Neil Schaefer is we're an employee-owned, we're an ESOP. We are probably one of the largest mom and pop shop firms you've ever seen. That's a compliment. We're not an engineering firm, we're an engineering family. I got to say, in this business, I've been in it for 25 years. I've been to only one other company for a short period of time. So I've got a good thing to contrast it with. And our turnover, and I'm going to say this, our turnover is probably the lowest of any firm I've ever seen. Prior to being an engineer, I worked in human resources as a PHR in employment. So I do know what turnover means and how to be able to present that. But I think I do want to say that we're happy to be here in Fort Bend County. We're enjoying our commitment. We look forward to a long-term devotion to infrastructure in Fort Bend County. And I got to say this for everybody in the room. Isn't it really interesting? If you can say anything about our times right now, you got to say it's entertaining right now. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you so much. For the non-engineers in the room, we have an equally good sponsor here. Charles, please come up and say some good words about Preactive Solutions.
So I'm Charles Swihart with Preactive IT Solutions, process-driven IT. Though I came from the engineering world, I used to do AutoCAD at Fluor, the light company, Bechtel Engineering. I trained AutoCAD designers. Really, the only thing I have in common with you guys today is that I'm old and bald. And I see a lot of that in the room today. So if you're involved in running your firm, and maybe you stay awake at night kind of wondering what's going on with cybersecurity, are our backups really good? What if we do get hit? How long is it going to take us to recover? You've got questions along those lines, and maybe you're worried that you're expecting your IT guys to be cybersecurity experts when you're not sending them to any training or giving them the budget to protect you. Then you give us a call and we come check things out and let you know where you stand and what things you ought to improve. But we've been in business about 18 years. We support some lawyers and some marketing people and accountants, but we've also got engineering firms, MEP firms, surveyors, construction GCs, that kind of thing. So we're used to dealing with AutoCAD and Revit and SolidWorks and all these other engineering programs and supporting those and managing the licensing and all that kind of stuff too. But anyway, thanks.
Way back when, yes. We need to adjust this now, and we're going to have to aim it up.
That's perfect.
All right, and so all of you that are online, if you would come out and sponsor these, you get to do your recruiting message like our firms here did, telling us all that we know they're good firms, they got good people, they've got good management, and they're out there trying to help serve our community. So be a sponsor next time, and you can get up here and share your message like these gentlemen did today. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to provide everyone in the audience that are with us via Zoom a few quick reminders. If you have a question, we ask you to use the little chat feature there, and then Ryan will bring that up to our speaker after we're done with the presentation. And at this time, I have the opportunity to introduce our speaker. Akinwande serves at Fort Bend County as the Assistant County Engineer managing all mobility projects. Ike holds a Bachelor and Master of Science in Civil Engineering, both from Rice University. He is a licensed professional engineer and professional structural engineer. Ike has been with Fort Bend County for 3 years, has spent his entire 18-year career in civil and structural industry, working in management, design, and construction of roads, buildings, and bridges. He is passionate about applying technological solutions to managing infrastructure and exploring ways to push the industry forward. Ike, please come share with us today.
Wow, you guys are great. A lot of familiar faces in the room. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the invitation to come out, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So we'll go ahead and get started. Sonny, you reminded me of something. I ran across this comic here, and this comic says, basically think of this: a woman walked into a post office to buy stamps, and the postal worker said to her, "Sorry, we no longer have forever stamps. We now have just taken it day by day stamps." You know, we are in some very interesting times, as you mentioned. And there's this military term that's been coined, and it's VUCA. We're living in VUCA times. The V stands for volatile. Realities are subject to change constantly. The U stands for uncertain. Even effective leaders are not sure what is coming next. Things are complex. I'm sure you guys remember this from grade school, middle school. Things are complex, and we only face challenges. Not only do we face challenges, but we face evolving types of challenges. And then many things are ambiguous. The answers are a little bit fuzzy, and many of us lack the clarity that we need to approach these issues. So these current times are requiring us to have some emotional skills, some social skills that really we probably didn't have to think about as much in the past. We've had to really understand each other in a more of a deeper way in the last few years. And so I want to share something else with you. Dan, you kind of reminded me of this. This is Maslow's hierarchy. Raise your hand in the room if you've seen or heard of this before, Maslow's hierarchy. Okay, a good number of folks. This is a psychological theory on human interaction. And on the right, what you see is that it starts at the bottom with the most basic types of human needs. These include food, rest, drinking water, feeling safe and healthy, and financial needs. Next is psychological needs. This includes our need for relationships and the strength and the confidence that oftentimes go along with these relationships. And then at the top is self-fulfillment, or being able to achieve your full potential. So if you pay close attention to these things, you'll be more able to understand other people around you. There's something missing. Facebook. No, I'm kidding. Facebook is probably not a basic need, but transportation definitely is. So here's a photo. Dan, you kind of reminded me of this as well, because connectivity is extremely important. And how does that happen? It happens through infrastructure. So here what you're looking at is the fact that each year, nationwide, there's an event called National Night Out. And in my neighborhood, we do it in multiple ways. There's block parties that are thrown at multiple subdivisions within the community. And this photo is from our section's block party. So as you look at the photo a little bit closely, you'll see some of the elements of Maslow's hierarchy of need. You'll see some food, some water, you'll see friendships, you'll see connections. But what you don't see is what brought us all together. And that is the infrastructure of roads and pedestrian facilities such as sidewalks. So today, what I want to try to do is share with you Fort Bend County's engineering's roadmap to meeting this basic need of transportation. So I will describe what we are doing and provide updates on some of the bond projects that we have. And then I will explain how we are going about doing this and innovating along the way. So just general notes. You guys are probably familiar with this. Our population has grown quite a bit. This 2020 number that I have is the most recent, 822,779 folks that live within Fort Bend County. Our unincorporated area, about 709. And then incorporated area, about 176. And then the land area square miles, about 885 square miles. So our engineering department must regulate an orderly development of unincorporated areas. These unincorporated areas are communities and areas that are outside the jurisdictional boundaries of incorporated cities. And as such, they are not serviced by any city, county government then serves as the regulatory authority for these areas, and we provide basic municipal services. These include law enforcement, building permits, libraries, parks, recreational programs, traffic signals, stop signs, etc. We have two groups within the engineering department that help to ensure quality development, and they are our development group and our permits group. Our development group has standards to ensure that there's conformity through the plan review process, permitting, inspection, and testing. They interact with developers, with owners, with utility companies, among many other people. And then we have the permits group. The permits groups includes the county's inspection team that actually goes out on the ground to see construction as it's going on and make sure that things last in a way that allows us to do typical type maintenance, not emergency maintenance. We also manage and update the major thoroughfare plan. You guys are probably familiar with it. You may have seen it at this website that I have listed here. And these are the roadways that are designed for the fast and heavy traffic, and they're intended to serve as major traffic arteries for considerable length. And the location of these streets is based on a grid system covering the area within the county and the city, and provides kind of a theoretical spacing of about 1 mile intervals. You guys are probably familiar with these things. The typical major thoroughfare consists of a 4-lane roadway divided with a raised median. When possible, roadways are designed to allow for the expansion to 6 lanes just to accommodate any kind of future congestion. We have Rick Stagley, the first assistant county engineer, and Maggie Dalton, who helped to oversee the development and major thoroughfare plan. And then we have Sean Eglinton in our office, who helps to lead the efforts as far as construction and permits. I have those listed there. Oh, skip it. Sorry about that. And so when it comes to roads and bridges, they are maintained in-house by a group of folks that are overseen by Scotty Wehat, and of course myself with all the mobility projects. So I just showed a few photo examples. One is of Charger Way, as temporary road out in Fulshire, and then A. Myers and Trophy Lane sidewalks. These are some completed projects that we have. Actually, this thing, it skipped on me just a little bit. I'm sorry. I wanted to point out here, this is a particular project. This is Madden Road. This is a mobility project from 2017. And there is a video associated with this, but it seems to be stuck just a little bit. But right here, I was driving westbound on this road. And to the south, there is a neighborhood, and to the north, there is just wide open land. And so where that comes into play is with mobility projects, things change on us fairly quickly. And so right now there's some talks with the people who own the land to the north about what they're going to develop there. And it's impacting our project so much so that we were originally planning to do just a simple overlay. But because of the development that may be coming, we may be switching over to a concrete roadway as long as the developer decides to participate in the project. And we'll continue to do the rest of our project as well. So moving on to how we go about doing the major thoroughfares. Top image is an example of an existing 2-lane roadway with open ditches. The county's typical major thoroughfare roadway is the 4-lane concrete roadway with underground storm sewer. These projects are designed with the goal of maintaining 2-way traffic during construction. This allows continued access to all the adjacent properties and then also to the neighborhoods. And so here's an example. Here I'm driving on Tamaron Crossing. It's a project in our 2020 bond. We recently held a PER for this project just a few weeks ago. The scope of this project includes the design and construction of a 2-lane concrete curb and gutter roadway, including inlets and leads. This will be the north half of the existing roadway. So we'll have a boulevard section at the very end of this project. It's about 0.8 miles long. And so as you can see on the south half of the boulevard is already in place, and that's what I'm driving on. Additionally, there are some existing sidewalks on the south half of the project. Therefore, we didn't originally account for sidewalks to be in this project, but because of the existing sidewalks on the south, and then also some existing sidewalks on the north side, but to the west and to the east, we're going to probably incorporate sidewalks. The major goal of mobility is to figure out what's going on in the existing world and try to go and coincide with it at the same time. Here you're looking at the typical 3-lane collector within a 60-foot right-of-way. There are some situations like this where really we can't maintain 2 lanes of traffic as we go through construction. We can only maintain 1. And this is an example of that. In these situations, we evaluate the traffic patterns to determine the most feasible direction to maintain during construction. The top right photo is an example of how messy construction can be, and I'm sure you guys have seen that. We work closely with our contractors, though, to maintain a clean driving surface, and also ask residents to be patient during construction. I get a lot of phone calls. The mess is always temporary, but well worth the complete project, and that's what we make sure to remind folks. Here, this video showcases a 2-lane roundabout up in the Fulshire area. This is the Texas Heritage Parkway. It was recently completed as far as a section that is within Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County actually completed our first 2-lane roundabout back in 2018. And studies have shown, as many of you guys have known, that roundabouts are safer than a traditional type of stop sign intersection or signal control at the same time. Roundabouts reduce crash injuries by about 75% based on some studies. And also the severity of accidents is usually reduced because lower speeds are required for you to navigate through the roundabout. So this is one of our 2020 projects. This is the Reading Road Roundabouts project. And the scope of this project includes converting 2 intersections over into roundabouts. It will also include about 500 feet of restriping in all directions for each of those roundabouts. And then we're also going to do some replacement of culverts along this roadway. So as many of you know, we've had a successful bond program throughout the years. And 2020 passed back in November. We're more than likely going to be looking at an upcoming bond. Every 3 years, 4 years is the typical for us. So we may be looking at that. We do have the bond capacity. We've been talking about that internally. So when it comes to the 2020 breakdown of our bonds, we had about 136 million that was dedicated to roadway improvements. And then we had about 52 million that was dedicated to partnerships with cities such as City of Fulshire, who was in the room. And then we had about 14 million that was for design and right-of-way projects only. And then intersection improvements, about 7 million. And then we had some extra other projects such as the emergency network system, which will be 5.4, and then sidewalks, about 2 million. Those sidewalk projects have really been dedicated to Precinct 3, or what is now probably Precinct 1. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we're set up, because most of you are probably familiar with this, but some of you may not know. This is our typical setup for the mobility program. So at the top, you see the overall PM is myself as the assistant county engineer. And then we have project management services that are provided by 4 different firms. Each of these firms is dedicated to one particular precinct within the county. And then of course, each of these firms has their own internal staff that handle things like utilities, environmental, and other types of things. And then within each one of these firms, these project managers will then manage the design consultants that we bring on board for the different projects. So we have the primes, and then we also have the sub-consultants that are managed by our project managers. Looking at right-of-way, we also have a right-of-way staff. I have one person that is a right-of-way coordinator, and he oversees 3 acquisition firms that we brought in as consultants to help us through that. And then on the side of construction, once we get there, we have a construction manager within Fort Bend County who oversees a construction management consultant, was AIG. And they oversee a few field engineers and inspectors, and they try to divvy up the work quite equally to make sure that everybody's able to get an opportunity to work. So most of you guys are also probably familiar with these milestones. If you're a consultant in the room, you've seen this many times before. I try to hammer it home every chance that I get. We have goals for each end of year following when the bond passes. So I want to go through some of those and also update you on some of the numbers of where we stand. By the end of year one, our goal is to execute all the consulting agreements. And we've done that for the most part. There are 3 that are outstanding, but that is mainly due to some of the projects shifting or other endeavors that we try to pursue within the projects to make sure that it's exactly what we want it to be. And then we have the preliminary engineering reports or investigations that are completed. We have about 37 that are ongoing. We've had about 6 completed PERs within the last few months. So we're moving along and making good progress. We also aim to complete right-of-way maps within this, but we've been a little bit behind on that, but we are catching up to that. Pandemic has had an effect on many things. So the end of year 2, we go for the final PS&E, and then the right-of-way acquisition and clearing, environmental permitting, and where there is no right-of-way being acquired, we aim to begin construction. We actually have about 5 2020 mobility projects that are at the 60% design level. And then we have 1 project that will more than likely go into construction in the first quarter of 2022. By the end of year 3, we aim to relocate utilities and then begin construction on projects where there was right-of-way acquired. And for those projects that don't have any right-of-way required, we aim to complete construction of those at that time. And then for all the remaining projects, by the end of year 4, we want them to be done. So here's something else that we've implemented. It's the mobility core values. Has anybody seen these before? Yeah, I see it, some shake, yeah. So RICE, it stands for responsiveness, innovation, collaboration, and empathy. So I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail, man, than I normally do, just to explain this. So one of the main things that consultants must do is be responsive to clients, 24 hours. The hope is that within 24 hours that we receive some type of response. That response could be as simple as, we received your email, we received your request, we're working on it, we'll get back to you soon. It doesn't mean that the answer comes back solved, but we want some kind of response. Has anybody ever heard of the 2-minute rule? Raise your hand if you've heard the 2-minute rule. All right. So the 2-minute rule is this rule that says that you should respond to any email in your inbox that would take you less than 2 minutes to do so. So try to do that immediately. You might as well. It's a low-hanging fruit. But what I like to do is encourage people to think about this a little bit differently. And so what I try to do myself is when I'm writing an email, I try to write it in such a way that whoever is on the receiving end of it can actually respond to that message within 2 minutes. They can process it, understand it, and then provide an answer within 2 minutes. So I encourage you guys to do something similar. A lot of times my emails are real simple, and a lot of times I receive emails that are simple like this. You get the subject, you get the salutation, you get the request. And if there's anything that's important or is urgent in that email, you write that in the subject line. We encourage our design consultants to use the tools that are available to them and to also innovate. We have 2 very important ones. One of those is a program called Masterworks. The other one is an engineering design manual that we're about to release. So I'll get into these a little bit further. The Masterworks program that we have is actually an online-based software, so you can access it anywhere. And many of our consultants are using it to upload invoices, upload some documentation, but for the most part, it's our project managers who are handling most of the heavy lifting on this. So with the engineering design manual, just going through some of the table of contents, just so you get a preview of this. And preliminary engineering, bridge, roadway, traffic signals, all of these things are going to be covered within the engineering design manual. And the whole goal is to provide some guidance to the engineering consultants that is consistent so that we can make sure that everybody is designing and providing deliverables that are of a consistent nature. We've got some information on geotechnical and environmental investigations. There's also stormwater pollution prevention plan guidance and some information on how to go about utility management. And then, of course, we have some information on construction drawing documents. Want to make sure that there's a level of consistency there as well. And then when it comes to design submittals and construction phase services, we have listed out some of our expectations there. And then lastly, we have some pretty neat templates that can be used both within the drawings and outside the drawings, such as the utility conflict tables, the right-of-way documents, the bid forms that we use when we're advertising the projects. And then lastly, we have some review checklists that our project managers use, as well as the design firms can, to make sure that all of the documentation is included within the design drawings and all the other procurement items that we would use to get contractors on board. Now, turning a little bit to Masterworks. Masterworks is going to help us with a lot of process management. We've been using it for the last 2 years. It was a long time coming. I'll tell you that City of Houston is working on the same program. Harris County has eBuilder that is used. So these programs are starting to roll out, and a lot of entities are starting to use them. And they're really good for us because they help us in understanding information across all our projects on demand. And that can be key. So here, what you're looking at, for example, is a project schedule, I believe. And here on the next one, if it'll come up. Okay, there it is. Here, what you're looking at is a budget that's within Masterworks. So we're able to track our budgets and our numbers and make sure that everything stays the way it needs to be. Okay. Here on this next one, you're taking a look at purchase orders. We're also able to do the invoicing and make payments to all of our consultants within the program, as far as using the process that's there to get us to the point where we can cut checks. So here's just an example of an expense form that's used within the program. So turning aside a little bit, we're also developing some best practices. These are general things to take in consideration for all of our design firms. And so we work with our project managers and our construction team to make sure that we talk about these different things. We also have a monthly meeting with the project managers where we discuss some of these topics. But I'd say just generally one of the things that we encourage consultants to do, drive the project. I gave you guys a couple of views based on me driving the projects. It's really, really helpful. Monitor the project area. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of development that happens and it happens like that. So we need to make sure that we're tracking with that so that our designs can adjust to it at the same time. Design within the existing right-of-way that is going to be acquired. This has been a sticking point. Sometimes we have had consultants that have not done that, and it leads to headaches. The other part of it is to verify the right-of-way that's provided by the surveyor. Believe it or not, surveyors are human too. Sometimes they make errors, so we got to make sure that we get all that stuff right. And then one of the other sticking points is following through on addressing comments. Oftentimes comments are made onto drawings for design consultants, and maybe they're ignored, maybe they're not clear, somewhere in between, things fall through the cracks. So we need to make sure we re-emphasize that to all of our consultants. And then lastly, working with property owners that are directly affected by the project. These can have immense impacts on what we do. Detention is one of those. Sometimes we'll have detention on a near or adjacent to a property owner, and we'll need to move it based on some communication that we have with them. We have been flexible enough to do that and provide that just in the best interest of our owners. The other thing we do is try to make sure that we communicate that we design with constructability in mind. This is a fairly new thing within the county, is that we've added a level of doing constructability reviews at the end of our projects, just to make sure that when we actually get out there, we're not having to encounter a bunch of change orders. This is one of them. In this particular instance, there were wood posts on a reinforced concrete box, and it didn't account for the fact that of the depth of the reinforced concrete box under the pavement. So therefore, we had to do a change order to get that resolved. Here's another one, pedestrian ramps. These did not account for proper drainage. So the solution included dialing on another portion of curb and installing some median concrete. This led to another change order. Simply put, here, you've got some water that's ponding in a certain area, not proper drainage. And then, of course, I'm trying to figure out design consultants that can design concrete that will immediately cure so that people like this don't have that kind of impact. You know, the other part of it is collaborating with local entities, whether that's cities, whether that's the MUDs, the LIS, the HOAs, the school districts, and the private utilities. We try to make sure that we coordinate with all of them. And so just as a further detail on that, we had a meeting back in the spring to talk with all the utilities that were adjacent to our projects. And it was a very, very good meeting. We were able to update them and update our contact information for all the utilities. And then in addition, we were to provide information on what our projects were. We provided a USB to all of the utilities that showed up. And this also included a table showing all the current utilities for each project. And then there were maps that we included, PDF and KMZ, you can take with them for consideration down the line. Now, the great thing about that is it's led to some more coordination. Now we are meeting almost monthly with Centerpoint, and it's been going pretty well. I think that our project managers can attest that it's probably helping move the needle a little bit more. And at the same time, it's giving us an opportunity to develop some relationships where they can help us understand their utilities in a better manner. So for instance, next month, we will be meeting with some Centerpoint representative and actually going out into the field and taking a look at some of their utilities so they can point out some things to us. So we're in a continual state of learning, and we need to make sure we stay that way. Another thing that we're doing is communicating with our various cities. We have a meeting coming up with the city of Houston just to introduce ourselves, do a meet and greet, understand our roles, and therefore understand how our projects might intersect in the future. It's very important for us to develop these kinds of relationships. And then as well with that, we have TxDOT. Dun, dun, dun. TxDOT is always, it's a moving target sometimes. And they've been kind of a lot of change over the last couple of years. So we really try to stay a little bit closer to them than normal. So every once in a while, we invite the TxDOT area engineer to come in and just chat with us. We can share some things. And we're nudging TxDOT a little bit more every time. So that's quite a success for us. So I wanted to also share with you guys, there's a lot of things going on within the county. You guys probably know that some boundaries have changed recently. And I've gotten a lot of questions about what's gonna happen. Well, the good thing is, because of everything I've mentioned to you, we're set up pretty well to handle this. We've had a lot of coordination amongst ourselves, and we have very strong relationships with our commissioners. And so we're committed to make the changes that are needed. And I think that at the same time, we have some buffers in place that are going to allow us to continue to meet timelines. Things might get slowed down a little bit, but at the same time, I think we'll still be able to maintain our budgets. We'll still be able to maintain our commitments to the community that we made through the bond. So this brings us to my last core value, and that is empathy. You know, empathy is one of those things that we've had to gather a lot more of throughout the last year and a half. If you really take a step back and think about it. And I came across this quote, and it's by Robin Chase. She says, "Transportation is the center of the world. It is the glue of our daily lives. When it goes well, we don't see it. When it goes wrong, it negatively colors our day and makes us feel angry and impotent, curtails our responsibilities." I find that to be true a lot of times. As I go back and I think about what occurred with our national night out, the fact that relationships that people that I met there have turned into even closer relationships, the fact that my daughter, we probably found a piano teacher for my daughter just by us having that event that was facilitated by sidewalks and roads. So all of these things are inspiring to me, and they help me keep going. So our Fort Bend County Commissioners Court approved the 2020 bond program. The residents came out overwhelmingly in support of it, 75% approval rating, which is quite high. And so I'll tell you, this is one of the signs that points to the fact that transportation is extremely important to the residents of Fort Bend County. Now, indeed, we do have some challenges. We also have some opportunities that are ahead. Many of you guys know that there was an infrastructure bill that was signed into law on Monday. And so there will be some trickle down from that. As I understand it currently, a lot of those funds are going to pass through the state in some way, shape, or form. So we'll be on the lookout for that and make sure that we make the most of that when it comes our way. So I want to leave you with this. We need to be flexible and adjust to circumstances. And that's one of our goals. We want to make sure to use resources and push projects forward to completion. And lastly, we want to make sure that we practice the mobility core values as we go through doing this. Just as some extra items, depending on who's online and who's in the room, if you want to check out some of the projects that are advertised, and I've left the QR code up there at the top left. And then also for some of the community, if you are a design consultant and you provide any services that match with our goals, I want to invite you to scan the QR code on the right. You can request to become part of our qualified vendor list. What you need to do is fill out that form, and once it's submitted, it will come to me. I'll be able to send you some information so that you can go about filling out that SOP. We thank you so much for all of it that you're doing as design community. You guys are great, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. So,
Very good, everybody. I see everybody taking pictures of the QR code. The QR code will be on his slides when Ryan posts them. They'll post them out there.
Our website.
You'll be able to get that, so they'll show up then. But if you can take a picture of it and it works now, you can get it quicker than 48 hours at Ryan to take the post. Ryan, do we have any questions online? No questions
No questions
online.
yet.
That's amazing. So have you met with our new textile area engineer, Carlos?
yes, I have.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Got him briefed on all the interactions of your mobility projects with how they are going to connect to textile projects?
Yeah, we've had some talks and discussions on that, and so he's familiar with what we have going on. In addition to that, he's helping us out understanding the processes, because sometimes that's one of the things we encounter that's a difficulty for us, is understanding exactly what we need, whether it's a permit or an AFA, a LOSA, and really just getting the ball rolling on their side and our side to make sure that we complete those things and can go about doing our projects.
We have questions from the audience here then. Yes, Sonny.
You mentioned the state basically administering the stimulus funds. Do y'all have any idea? I don't know if it's been identified what agency is actually doing it.
That's a great question. I don't have that answer just yet. I'm trying to track that down myself.
Yeah, I knew it's all going to still fluid, so it's.
It might flow through different agencies,
Yeah.
depending on whether there are funds set aside for transportation or bandwidth augmentation for other infrastructure. And I might suggest it's a great quote that you had up there, but we could take transportation and we could change it and put something in there. That's not the right switch. Electricity.
Mhm.
When we all lost our electricity, or when some of us lost our electricity this past February, we were frustrated, impotent, and it colored our day poorly. Because we did not have electricity, or we couldn't see what the colors were. It might be water, it might be wastewater, but there's lots of things that this committee, what our goal is with the chamber to advance understanding and knowledge of infrastructure. Transportation is probably one of the biggest ones, because without good transportation, we're not getting around our community, making those connections and contacts. The goods and services that we need, whether it's going to the grocery store or getting something repaired at our house, they're not there without good transportation. So, as we change our commissioner precinct boundaries, they had previously allocated funds for mobility, and now guess what? This commissioner's precinct, or that commissioner's precinct has now got possibly a disproportionate amount of funds. I take it they're not going to go back and change anything there since we already voted on it.
Yeah, when it comes to the funding, we really allocated the funding per project, and not necessarily per precinct. I know that there's some thought given to that as they go about figuring out what their projects are going to be. But on the end of once things are passed, we really stick those funds right to the project.
And that's a good way. What's good for the county, not necessarily for each individual precinct, that we want to see what it's like. The state will try to administer our funds on month three. What's good for the state of Texas. Not to say, well, Portland County's got 3% of the population of the state, so we're going to give them 3% of the funds. Well, that might be Andrews County out that only has 0.01% of the population of the state. It's got, there's still 20 that runs through it, it needs to be widened or something like that. So they might be a disproportionate share versus population. I know that there's a lot of consultants here. We're all going to be looking at the QR codes. Most everybody in the room is probably already a registered vendor. But we'll all want to talk to you, and we thank you for coming out and providing this very educational and informative presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the formal closing, thank you, Mr. Akinwande, for your time, put this together, for sharing all your insights with us. I want to thank our sponsors, Trees Nichols, Hewitt Zollers, Neil Schaefer, and Preactive IT Solutions for your sponsorship and continued support of the Chamber and the Infrastructure Planning Division. Regarding upcoming events,